What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and today I'm coming to you guys with a video about emotions and feelings. Now, last week I did a video about the thought process, about how I understand the thought process and how I use that understanding to help me navigate through the experience of thinking. And I want to kind of do the same thing with the emotions and the feeling senses. So what I want to start off with is I want to distinguish the difference between emotions and feelings and how I kind of understand how to distinguish those two. And then I also want to talk about all the different kinds of feelings that we have and the different things that stimulate those feelings and where they're kind of coming from. So, to start off, the difference between emotions and feelings in the way that I experience them and the way I like to define it is that emotions are things that come from our belief system. And what I mean by that is that they're physiological feeling states, emotional states that are triggered based off of our belief system and how through our belief system we're interpreting our reality, right? So a way of describing this is the idea that without a belief about something, we can't have an emotion about it, right? So what I mean by that is that if we don't have an opinion about something, then we're really neutral about whatever it is. There's no opinion, so we don't have an emotion about it. If we don't have a strong belief about something where we're invested in some kind of perspective about whatever it is that we're interacting with, then we don't have an emotional response. It's actually really flat. And you can experience this in the experience, or an example of that is, if say, for example, if you've ever not known a word or never heard a word before, right? You don't know what the word means. And then the second you learn that word, all of a sudden you start hearing it everywhere. Now, prior to learning the word, you didn't really have any reference for it or a belief about it because you didn't even know what it was. So therefore, it kind of slipped under the radar and you didn't have any emotional response to it. It was just kind of like, this weird sequence of phonetics that you had no, correlation to. But once you learned what the word was and have a belief about it and then have an opinion about what it means, then you start hearing it all over the place and it creates more of a response that you can measure because, like I said, you have a belief about it now. Now this, expands to obviously more intensely to things that we have stronger beliefs about. But especially when we have opinions, when we have, sympathies or antipathies or attractions or repulsions to different ideas, different beliefs, different stimulus in our reality, we have a larger emotional response. And the primary intense emotions that we feel are emotions where we have a really strong opinion about something. So either something that's really, that's so terrible, or that's so amazing. And it's our opinion about it that creates that emotional response in it. If we didn't have an opinion or we were neutral about the concept or the stimulus, then we wouldn't have that emotional response. So that's how I define emotions, things that are correlated with our belief system, okay? Now, the other kinds of what I'm calling feelings are all the other feeling sensations that we experience that feel in many ways similar to emotions, but are not actually emotions. And I'm calling these feelings. So the reason why feelings and emotions feel so similar is because we're experiencing it still through the sensory perception of our physiological body. When we have an emotion, we have a physiological response, and we feel that physiological response in our body. And when we feel things also, like when we feel even like the wall, when we're feeling the physical wall, we have a physiological response in our body also. So it's like our body is the sensor. And because our body's the sensor that we process both emotions through and feelings through, even physical feelings, there's crossover in the experience. And this is why very often I think feelings and emotions get mixed up, or we use that terminology interchangeably. But I'm clarifying the difference between them. So in the most grossest sense, the feeling sense is like feeling physiologically, like bumping up against other physiological, physical reality, right? And having a feeling from that. Now, other feelings, the ones that I call sensing feelings, is a more subtle experience of that. So sensing is something that actually a lot of people even correlate to certain psychic ability. But sensing is it's the same in the sense that you're feeling through your physiology, but you're actually sensing the vibration of something that's external to you. Now, that vibration could be something that's even non-physical. You might be feeling a non-physical vibration of some sort of thought form, or some sort of non-physical entity or energy, or you could be feeling the energy of an argument in the room, or feeling the energy of somebody's really high vibe state. You could be feeling the vibrational energy of the trees or of nature in some way, and we're feeling that with our physiology. It's like a sensing ability that we have to feel things that are external to us. And like I said, this is subtle, right? It can be very subtle, and oftentimes is. And because of that, it's associated oftentimes with psychic ability, the ability to sense. So this is a feeling sense that I like to call like the ability to sense, right? And that's kind of how I differentiate it from other feeling. Now, another kind of feeling is what I like to call instinctual feeling. And instinctual feeling are the feeling senses, the physiological responses that we get from our instinctual dispositions. So that would be like sexual arousal, or being startled, or hunger, or any kinds of these other physiological senses that come up regarding our survival and our instinctual capacities as human beings. And again, this crosses over into the physiological, and it interfaces with the physiological. And so therefore, it's very similar in a lot of ways. But it's different in the sense that it's coming from instinctual drives that we have as human beings. Okay, so we have emotional feelings. We have sensing feelings, where we're sensing fields and other energies. We have instinctual feelings, where we feel things instinctually. We have physical feelings, where we're actually touching physical phenomenon in the real world. And then we have what I like to call transcendent feelings. These would also be called transcendent emotions if you wanted to. But what this transcendent feeling is when we're tuning into what I like to call like the causal archetypes of the universe. Or this is like when we're tuning into those feeling essence states that transcend all physical reality, and that the states that are correlated with non-dual experience are moving into the causal plane. So these are the non-polarized feeling senses, essence feelings that we get from connecting to the greater consciousness, to our higher self, or our higher kind of like infinite self. And these are the emotions, or the things that we label similar to emotions, as things like unconditional love, or transcendent peace, or isness, or presence. I've talked about this in my presence video. I've talked about this in several other videos. But what this is this is a universal archetype, essence energy, that has no polarity. There's no polarization to it. So unconditional love doesn't have a polarity. Love has a polarity because there's love and hate. But unconditional love, there is no hate because it loves everything unconditionally. So there's no polarization to it, right? It's just one essence emotion. And this emotion or sense, or transcendent emotion, or transcendent feeling that I'm calling transcendent feelings, is something that when we get into a deep meditative state, we kind of relax into and understand as our truest identity, or our greatest sense of our transcendent self, right? And this is different than any of the other emotions. But again, like all the other ones, it's moving through our physiological, biosuit. And because of that, it interacts with our nervous system in a similar way as all the other emotions and feelings. So I wanted to explain all these different things so that we have more of a context for the kinds of feelings and emotions that we're having, and how to discern, where they're coming from and the different places that they're coming from, so we can more easily navigate through the reality. How this really helps is that when we understand that we're having an emotion, we realize that we can modulate that emotion by shifting our belief system regarding how we associate with whatever it is we're engaging with. If we're having a sensing feeling, it's really good to be able to differentiate when we're sensing something, like we're sensing an emotion coming from someone else, or we're sensing an energy, like a torsion field in our sphere. When we're sensing that, be able to tell the difference between that and an emotion. Because very oftentimes when people are highly empathic, and empathic oftentimes translates to having really intense sensing abilities. When we're highly empathic, it's sometimes hard for people to differentiate when they're feeling their own emotion or when they're feeling or sensing another emotion outside of them. But when we can make the correlation between the two, then we can understand that there's a similarity, but they're also different, and that we don't necessarily need to identify or take the same kind of responsibility for the sensing feeling that we're feeling outside of us as we do when we're having an emotion based off of a belief system that we have, right? So also, this gives us the ability to, when we do sense an emotion or even have a triggered instinctual feeling sense response, for us to realize that that initial feeling or sensing is something that is kind of like reactionary, and it has nothing to do with our belief system. But very oftentimes we can have a belief or opinion about the sensing that we're getting, meaning we could have a belief that it frustrates us when we get startled. So then when we get startled, that initial feeling is actually just an instinctual response. It's like our biology's hardware, and it's a useful mechanism that our hardware has. But then our belief about being frustrated or not liking being startled can create an overreactive emotional response that responds to that startling. So the second one is one that we have tremendous control over being able to modulate, and the first one is something that, you know, through practice we can modulate more, but is actually something we don't really want to get rid of. Sorry there, cut out, memory chip was full. But we want to hold on to that startle response, because that's what keeps us alive. It's a safety precaution for our biology in the physical realm. This is also helpful in the ability to learn how to radiate our sense energy, our field energy, and the difference between that and feeling just emotions, right? So there is a way to be able to expand your field and radiate that out in a kind of like force field sphere that is different to just holding an emotion, like in using a thought or a belief to like bring an emotion forward. And there's also the ability to transmit these universal archetype energies. So there's an ability to become a portal and let these universal archetype energies channel through you and expand out into your field, so that you can send that off for other people to feel as sensing abilities, and then if they choose to, harmonize with it and actually upgrade themselves through the harmonization. So anyway, I'm sure that you can see through the extrapolation of this that there's many different ways of interpreting more precisely the different kinds of feelings and emotions that we're having, and all the different practical uses that there are for them. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll talk to you guys next time. One love.